All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to another industry spotlight. This is going to be, as always, a fun stream. This is something I've been looking forward to, having our guest here, Andrew Swift. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited for this one, especially for everyone watching, because Andrew does some very unique illustration work for the medical world. So this will be stuff that's a little bit different than we're all used to. It's not the gaming or the film world. So I'm excited to show everybody what you have been doing and your industry has been doing with ZBrush, for that matter, over these years, to really showcase other industries that are out there. And that's the point of these streams too, is to show people what else is out there in the world. So thank you for joining me in this journey here.
You bet.
Yeah. So as always, I'll be monitoring the chat.
Okay.
So if there's questions coming through, I will be funneling them to Andrew as we go here. So feel free to put questions in there if you want. There's already one coming through right away. So I'll just give it to you right now, Andrew, so you're aware of this question, because you might be able to talk about this as you go along. So what's your process pipeline for dealing with DICOM files if you work with them? You work with them a lot.
If I'm doing anatomy stuff, I do. Yeah, and I've got some of that in here, and I can show you that and talk and speak to it. I really don't have. I kind of figure it out a little differently each time. Lots of times I just use it as a sketch. It's just it's just a dimensional cloud of stuff that I build around and into.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's
cool.
what I do, and I'll show you some of that as we go.
Yep. Awesome. So what we'll do is here we're going to show Andrew's screen, and so you guys will see his ZBrush. And I know you also wanted to show a little bit of a video. Would you want to start off with that then? And
yeah, sure. That'll give you an overview of what our company does, yes. And then I'll speak specifically about, because I also do illustration work, which is a subset of what the larger company does. The company does high-end animation and interactive and 3D printing and all kinds of stuff. So yeah,
multiple facets.
Yes.
All right, so we'll play the video so you guys can have an understanding of what ISO form does, where Andrew works, and then we'll dive in and he'll start showing you guys some stuff in ZBrush. So go ahead, Kyle, play that video. Very nice. That's a great video.
Thank you very much.
Really shows what you guys do there. I love the video game showing, hey, let's dive in. That was like the one that reminded me of the 80s. That was like a blood vessel, right? That they were flying through, shooting what? Like probably that's a great way to teach people, here's how the things work within the body. So
it's an interesting project. I kind of wish I had it so I could show it to you. It was a very, we designed every bit of it. And it was supposed, that's what they wanted. They wanted a low poly game, and they had to shoot parts of the cells and the molecules that were relevant to a certain disease. And then when they got to certain points, that we would ask them questions, and they had to answer questions before they could proceed. It was part of a pharmaceutical thing for training. And we actually built a controller for it, and a screen for it and everything. And it was actually a pretty fun game. And it went to a trade show, and people used it for a week. And
so wait, so you built like one of the old school, like full on towers, like arcade?
So no, we didn't do that. We they at the beginning we had a booth company build and do all that. But my partner Russ didn't like the fact that we were going to make this thing and deliver it and not have a chance to test it with an actual controller. So he went and 3D printed and built a Bluetooth controller for it. And this is a long time ago. This is 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, and he had little buttons on it for fire, and he did the whole thing up. That was just for us to test it. It was it's a great project. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun.
It's a fun project. That's so cool.
So, I've watched a couple of these, and I thought that the format that I would choose is just to go through some projects that I've got that were relevant, where ZBrush was really essential. And then hopefully you will find ways to tell me that, there's a better way to do this. And because I'm not a super user of ZBrush. I mean, I actually do the simplest kind of rendering, but it's what I need for my illustration stuff. So this would be a typical surgical illustration that we would do. This is surgeon to surgeon communication. This is how you do a laminectomy. And the lamina is the back part of the vertebra that protects the spinal cord. And it gets pathology and gets thick, and they have to remove it. And it happens in a series of steps. Okay. And this is the finished piece, but this is what I had to go on. And the surgery is incredibly dimensional. The angles are very specific. And so when I first saw this job was passed to me by another illustrator, not at our company, somewhere else. And I looked at this and I'm like, this is never going to work. We're never going to get out of this thing and be able to, to solve the problem. So what I did was, and this also was a long time ago. What I did was this is right after Dynamesh came out, and you could Dynamesh something and delete something and close the holes. And so what I did was I went through and did the surgery for them live, and made
them watching. They were watching.
Yeah. So we had a screen. We had a video call. Yeah. And I brought this up, and I had different shapes for the different tools, and I could use to subtract out. And I actually performed the surgery according to where, they would tell me what to do, and I would do it basically. And there were a couple of calls. The first one, I didn't know what to do. The second one, I was kind of cued into what was going on. And I would draw where I was going to cut, and then I would cut it out and smooth it out. And you can see it's pretty rough, but I would also write right on there, this is the first cut. This is the second cut. This is the third cut. Yeah. And as we went through it, I realized this is orbiting around a little bit too much. You can see that's the third cut, and then on and so forth. And then here it is that says rongeur, which is a French word for that particular tool. And then these are the 5th, the 6th, the 7th cuts. And then what I did was I went and made a proper ZBrush project that showed cut number 1. And then cut number 2, number 3. And the interesting thing about this is, as I was doing it, there's the attending physician, there's his chief resident, there's the fellows and all these other people that were on the call. And it was a lot of fun. It was a great call. I really enjoyed working with him. And what happened was he said, you're doing that wrong. The angle's wrong. You need to move this osteotome. An osteotome is something you use to cut off the bone. And he said, that's the wrong angle. You need to angle it more like this. And so I started to move it. And one of his junior members said, no, it's not. That's right. And so they started arguing in the call about how the surgery was performed, not about my ability to represent. They themselves were having an aha moment about their surgery because they could see it in such good dimensional in reality, the dimensions of the different pieces. So that was kind of cool. And it allowed me to go in a call and work on this model and talk to them about what I was going to remove at which step. And anyhow, so this is where we ended up here.
So that's the sketch they gave you. Then that's
the sketch, the original sketch. And I said, that's not going to work. We're going to have to come up with a different solution. And so then I went through and made the models. And then once I make the model, I do a really low resolution rendering. I bring it into Photoshop and adjust the line weight. This is before I knew how to use the mixer outline thing, which you showed me how to use. And I use that all the time now.
Yeah, you render a lot out of ZBrush now, right? With the N2R stuff.
You know what, Paul? A lot of these are just screen grabs. I just screen grab it and drop it in because they.
Okay.
Yep. And because like the little white highlights there, those are all painted in Photoshop. This outline around the edge, that's all painted in Photoshop. I've got a Cintiq. And so I can do that stuff. The instruments were placed in the correct place because I need them to be in, I need the perspective of this little ellipse here. And I need the lamina spreaders. You just can't make that stuff up. If you do, you'll get it wrong. And if you use the actual instrumentation, if you take the time to build it, it keeps the client from coming back and saying that's too big or that's too small. That you can show them the 3D file, put the two things next to each other without perspective and say, I'm happy to change these. Just tell me which one needs to be bigger or smaller. And usually when they see them in that way, they realize, oh, they are the right size. It's just an artifact of the amount of perspective or something like that. It doesn't look right. It gives me an objective way of making these things.
And this is to be put in a journal, or was just for them for training purposes?
This is a journal article where they say this is I can't remember the specific name of it. It's actually on the other sheet. So yeah, you can see here a lot of these little white highlights I painted. This yellow stuff here, which is the ligamentum flavum. And that means the yellow ligament. It's the one that goes across, and that has to be removed as part of the laminectomy. And this little chunk here, I think the chunk was actually there, but I ended up sketching around it. So there's a lot of tuning it up in Photoshop to make the thing fade into the background.
Yeah.
What I did then was I would export a Z depth out of ZBrush. There used to be a neat little button that said bring in as layers, and it'd bring it all in as layers. That doesn't seem to exist anymore. So I still export those by hand and assemble them that way.
You mean going to Photoshop?
Yeah, to go to Photoshop. I know you can use that other feature to go to Photoshop, but I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, there's the ZBrush to Photoshop plugin, which will send out render passes and bring them in as layers. And the Z app link can go to Photoshop as well and send over in layers.
I need to learn those. I need to teach myself those. I'm not as up to speed as I should be.
And then repeating, someone's asking, so what Andrew had brought up in the material menu of ZBrush, there's a menu called Mixer. And he's using that. Go ahead. You can show it. He's using that now. Yeah, there you go.
And it makes a really nice kind of pen and ink sensitive outline. And when you combine that with the, I don't know if this is going to render. Yeah, this renders relatively fast. Oh, let's go through and fix that. So this is how I change the angle of my shadows. Paul's going to look at everything I do and say, oh my God, he's a caveman.
No, you're good.
I am a caveman, Paul. All right, so that would render like that.
Yeah.
And so then I would export. I usually just export that, and then I have more control over it in Photoshop, right?
Okay.
That's usually what I do.
Right.
I have noticed that with when you export the outline, it trims the outline on the outside of the shape. That doesn't come through, but then you can just stroke it in Photoshop. So it's not a big deal. But if you had a really thick outline on something, it would.
Yeah, there's an anti-alias that's applied to the render when you render,
Mhm.
but that's also ZBrush. The ZBrush to Photoshop actually will give you two different alphas. It'll give you a non-anti-alias and an anti-alias.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, you'll get both.
I got to start doing that. Okay.
Okay, and then you can just tell it to render, and then it'll send this out and render, and then Photoshop will open and everything goes.
I got you.
And so you're using majorly looks like Skin Shade 4. And
yeah,
then,
that's kind of the one I've settled on.
Yeah. Someone's just asking, so I'm just reiterating the questions. Yeah. So
And
he's using Skin Shade 4,
Yep.
and he's using that mixer outline
Yep.
in the menu that he's got up right now.
Yeah, and I can show you a little bit more about that. And if you need to change the color of it, let's see here. So this is the strength of the outline, and Paul's going to correct me if I'm wrong about any of this. And then this is how much it encompasses the shape. It'll basically grab onto more of the internal features as you move that slider down, and as you move it to the right, it will do that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll kind of tighten it up to just the outline. And I now have it as a default because I use it really on everything. I mean, most of my illustration work is going to have that one way or another. And if you need to change the color of it, it's right here.
Yep.
And that's under the...
It's in the material itself. So
it's
in the cavity swatch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the deal.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's live too. So if you sculpt, all that's going to update too. That's the benefit of this, because you can do this rendering wise too with a filter. But the benefit of Andrew doing it this way is it's going to be interactive. So we start sculpting, it'll constantly be updating for him.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've been working in the two 3D programs I use the most is ZBrush and Cinema 4D. Thank goodness the companies merged. So I'm hoping that's going to mean great things for. I hope some of the things I love the most about ZBrush are going to work their way backwards to Maxon. And one of them is that the default views in the viewport render and in the viewports in Cinema are hard for me to make sense of visually. And in ZBrush, I can see what I'm working on while I'm working on it. This is what it's going to look like in the final, So I'm very, because I spend so much time in ZBrush, it really does help with making decisions,
So question for the vertebrae models, are they started from scans? And if so, are they also sculpted on and using alphas and manual sculpting?
Yeah, they are. And so all this stuff out here is all just sculpted on. That kind of detail won't come through. Some of the larger foramina details will come through, but most of it will not.
And it started from a scan. So like someone's asking, was it an MRI or?
Yeah, usually they're CT scans. They're high resolution CT scans.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to show some of that, but so much of it has patient data in it. And I didn't really know how to, I can do that again then another day if you want me to, or I can make a tutorial or something for people.
Yeah, we can maybe do some follow-up stuff too.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah. So here's what you get from scan data. You can get great bones. You can get teeth if it's a fine enough slice. The teeth are so small. You can actually get air.
Air?
You can get air.
Yeah.
So you can get great contrast with anywhere there's contrast. So you can make models of the mastoid air cells or the sinuses or the lungs or the trachea. And I've got some of that I can show actually. Let me show you that. Let's see here, rocket tree. So this is a scan of this. So you're looking down. This is a chunk really through here, starting here and looking down.
And this is a CT scan, right?
Yeah, this is a CT scan. So you're facing. My back would be at so this is a vertebra up here.
Okay.
Okay. So this is your trachea. This is your right lung. This is your left lung. These are the vessel. This is your superior vena cava and your aorta and stuff like that, probably. All right.
Is
so what we're going to do
lymph nodes too? Does it even
What's
get?
that?
Does it pick up lymph nodes as well in CT scans now? Or is it just?
It really picks up things where there's a difference in density.
Okay.
If there's a density in the tissue, then it will pick it up. Bone's dense, soft tissue's not. There's some minor differences, but when you go to make a 3D rendering of it, it really is best at depicting a change in the contrast, a change from a dark value to a light value. Okay. And the greatest contrast difference is from air to tissue. And so we're able to see this. And the trachea, it's a little hard to see, but you'll see it as we start flying through it. The back of the trachea is flat. It's a horseshoe shape, and it's flat across the top like this. So as we go down, you should, if you pay attention to it, you can kind of see that shape. Right. This is called the carina, which after a lecture the other day now, we all know means the keel of the boat. And that's the part where your bronchial tubes split to left and right. Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're going to fly down here into the...
We're learning about anatomy, people.
That's what we're doing. That's what we do.
So for importing the CT scans, are you bringing in as an STL? How are you getting them into ZBrush?
I usually bring them in as an OBJ.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure if there's a difference there, I don't really know what it is or how it will work. And it's usually such really dirty data. I've got some I can show you. It's not really usable by itself. I mean, it is for something. You kind of see that it's flat back there, and the rings come over this way.
Yeah.
So, and then I'll show you.
Are
the
you
model.
using to convert the scan data? Or is it exporting straight OBJ?
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Let's see. Let's do the broken pelvis. Yeah, we do the broken pelvis. No, let's not do that. Let's do the other one first. Let's do heart valve. First illustration. Here we go. I got it. Sorry, that took so long. All right, so this is the mediastinum. So this is a section through this part of your chest, starting at about here and going down to your let's use your diaphragm down here.
All right.
And so to me, none of that is really useful. I mean, some of the sternum out there you might be able to get, but how long is that going to take to sculpt? Not very long. So what I would do is I would build models separate from this and bring them in and use this as a guide to place them.
Okay, so someone was asking, how do you ensure your proper scale measurements of the objects then?
I'm not terribly, the way that I would do it, and it's funny, I just did a project that was the full skeleton. And what I used was I went and found normative anthropometric data that was collected by the military. And there's a couple of data sets out there. And what it does is they measure the acromial distance, they measure the absolute height, they measure the distance of the fingertips to the ground, those sorts of things. And I set all that up in Cinema in real world scale, Z'd it over to ZBrush, and then took my skeleton model and adjusted everything whenever I adjust anything, I always go down to the lowest subdivision level. So that anytime I'm going to make a gross change in the shape of something, I always do it at the lowest subdivision level. So it seems like terrible things happen when I do that at a high subdivision level. But yeah, that's what I do. And, one of the problems with real data, and people get very caught up in using it and said, is it from real data? The truth is that all real data has problems. And let me show you this. If I show someone with a broken jaw, is that too itchy?
No. No, okay. You're fine.
All right. I don't want to. Maybe I'll just tell people.
The question's coming through multiple times. Where can they go to get these scans? Is there a website you went to?
The best. I don't have a good answer for that. There used to be some freely available on this website, Osiris website, and they made it a paid up thing, and now they're paying. You have to pay for the scans. I don't have a good answer for you because I've collected so much of that data over the years.
Yeah, so on the bottom right corner you're talking, so people can see that in the stream. Yeah. If you want to pay for a scan, I think that's where he was getting them.
Well, the other thing is that if you go and get a scan, you should make sure they give you the disk. If they give you the disk, you can get Horos, which is a free software, and you can bring it in there and import it. There, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. Right. Yeah. So this is a scan where, this is an actual person, and he had this terrible accident here. You know,
Wow.
it's amazing the bone would break so many times.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is, my point in this is that this guy doesn't have, he doesn't have the back of his head, but he's got a really good cheekbone, good zygoma, good forehead, good nasal bones and stuff like that. So in this case, we could extract that data and have that. And then what I would do is, once I found out with my normative anthropometric data set, I would figure out where that's supposed to be in space, roughly how big it's supposed to be, because they give you things like the nasion, right, which allows me to position the skull against the absolute height. And then I would use just the parts of the skull that aren't broken.
Okay.
So,
yeah. You could also probably bring in that, right? And that can use it as in essence, a reference itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
3D reference now instead of a 2D reference right inside of ZBrush.
Absolutely. Yeah. I bring it in because now almost everything that our company does, we have a low resolution model that's made for real-time rendering, because so much of the stuff we do is interactive. You know, we need to know all that. So, yeah, so that's what we did. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the cleaned up version of this. This is the model that we built. Oh, that's the wrong one. Hang on.
So this is the original scan, and then this is your cleanup version.
Yeah, I'm going to find it eventually, Paul. I'm not going to let it beat me. There we go.
Oh, wow.
And so.
And again, this is all right with inside of ZBrush. It looks like, yeah, you're even with inside of ZBrush for the video.
Yeah, this is ZBrush. It's not rendered. And you know, honestly, in our workflow in our company, I don't render that much. Most of it goes over to Nick Klein and Jamie, and they do they have Redshift and they do all the stuff. And I'm busy enough doing this stuff that I don't miss it. And so the simple renderings that I get out of really often the viewport just using just quick simple renders at a BPR, I take them into Photoshop, I paint the other things on them that I need, and I'm off and running. Because often what I'm doing here, I'll show you some images in a minute. The ZBrush is the renders are actually a small part of much larger illustrations. And as I'm building them for those illustrations, they become part of our asset library. We know we have them in the bank as a starting point for other interactive or high-end 3D projects later on.
So, because someone was asking again, just to reiterate, Marco was asking, the conversion of the scans from CT scan to OBJ, they're just giving you OBJs, or are you using something else to convert to OBJ?
No, I using Horos, I can export from, I can make a model in Horos or Osirix or whatever. And basically I should really have, I can do another tutorial on this because it is a little complicated, but basically you adjust it. So what you see on the screen in their viewport render is the skeleton, let's say, and you measure those values. And then when you go to export there's a setting for, save as OBJ. It wants you to import values, and basically you use the values from your viewport and you say, I want a range from here to here. And then it's never exactly right. You have to export it. And then the problem is usually there's a fine line. If it's too much data, you get the entire person from skin edge to skin edge all the way across. If there's too little data, you end up with just a zillion little, fractured polygon. The aorta will be in a million different pieces. And so you have to kind of do it 5 times to figure out, you got to optimize it to figure out what it is. But so for something like this, I probably got the skeleton from actual data and then built around it and, retopologized it all. But the retopology tools now are so good. I could get one of those vertebra, carve out what I didn't need, hit ZRemesher, and it would make as good topology as I would never need for my purposes. And it just makes the whole thing so much easier. I can't believe how much I rely on ZRemesher now and UV Master. And I just don't know, we couldn't do this without it. Like the old way of doing it in Maxon where you pin points and unwrap, and it would just eat you alive. It would just eat you alive to do it. So a little bit about these last 2 models that I'm showing. These are for undergraduate anatomy education, and they were designed with a team of anatomists, and the anatomists told me what to put. I kind of came up with the idea of what section we would show and pitched it to them. And they said, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. And then we build it, piecemeal, and and when this is finished in the final deliverable, they can roll over this and all these highlights come on and show you what all the different fascial layers are and everything. So
yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, I think I got them all now. And then there's other people also chiming in of other software they use too.
Oh yeah.
Materialize.
Yeah,
I Materialize. Yeah.
Yep. There's a ton of software out there that does it. They're all based on some underlying software that was written for the original Visible Human project, and I think they all kind of leverage the same tools, but some do much better things than others. Mimics, I know, is particularly good, and they give you opportunities to do things like measure volumes. You can measure the volume of something. You can cut out the liver and figure out how big it is. You can figure out in radiology, one of the big things is intensity. So they look at the intensity of the pixels and they measure how much intensity is in a certain area as a way of determining disease. So I thought I'd go through and show some images, some ZBrush renders that made it into my illustrations.
Okay.
So this is these are called wormian bones. It's not a pathology. It's just you could have them and not know it, and they're just little sutures that make little islands in the skull. Now I would do this with the extract brush. I would take part of this little thing down here. I did this as a demo the other day, and you can just kind of draw them wherever you want. They just pop right in place. I almost always have normal as a start, and you'd be surprised how hard it is once you've messed something up with a pathology to get back, or another state to get back to normal. So I try to always start with normal and then make a derivation of that from there.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Just in terms of process, let me see here. If there are specific things, Pete, you think people want to see, I hope you'll tell me.
Yeah, I think they're enjoying what you're sharing right now.
Okay. So I built all this, and this is all built in ZBrush. They're not magnificent models. This was kind of fun. This was using the live Boolean, which I now rely on for just about everything to make because medical illustration is very much about making magical sections of things. How do we, if I make a magical section through someone's, skull, what structures am I going to see? And in this case, these are functional parts of the liver. And I have these all set out as using live Boolean, where I move, 8 different copies of the liver around, and they're all being trimmed by each box. So I can move the boxes and change the shapes of these things. And then once I have that done, I export that. Some of these vessels are done in 3D, and some of them are, maybe they're all done. And all the vessels might be done in Photoshop. And I don't like it that much. I would kind of wish I would have, because the perspective there's something off on the perspective of some of these now that I'm looking at it.
So you had mentioned some of your people are also rendering in Redshift, right?
Yeah. So this is a Redshift render.
Okay. That's what they were asking, if they could see some Redshift renders too.
Yeah. I don't have a ton of that because I was trying to stick to stuff that I can do myself in ZBrushes. That's what we've done. This was an interesting thing. This just went out recently, and basically endothelial cells in the eye, when they die, one of the problems is they have junctions like this, and they kind of come apart, and they leak fluid out into your eye, which causes things like wet macular degeneration. And I'm prepared to talk about how I did those islands, because it really was a good solution. What I did was I had a tube, and I sculpted the little grooves in there. I masked that. I made a polygroup of the mask. I deleted it, and that left me with islands that were the shape of that. And then I just extruded them and Z-remeshed them. It worked really, really well. Then I pushed them and pulled them to make them different states using layers. Sometimes I use layers, and sometimes I just duplicate the model. The advantage of duplicating the model is you can have it on in the background and you can see what you're doing. And so as I shrunk those little islands to show that these things were coming apart from one another, I could see what I was doing.
Do you create your own alphas for detailing bone and tissues?
No, I don't usually do that. I'll make my own extractor brushes for different things, but
Okay.
Yeah, I don't usually do that. I've gotten into doing more hard surface modeling, and it's just a great tool for that. In fact, I've gone in so far as to set up hotkeys for crease and uncrease. So
these are using ZModeler. You did these
Yep.
at a low polygon stage using ZModeler
Mm-hmm.
and then divided them up.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. And I remember calling you one day and I said, why is dynamic? I remember getting upset about dynamic subdivision at some point.
Yeah.
Thinking it was, and now I completely, it didn't take long for me to figure out why it was, needed to be the way it is. I use dynamic subdivision now for all my hard surface stuff, of course. And it's just it's just a wonderful tool. It really is. So this is me as a baby. No, it's not me. It's, it does kind of look like me, unfortunately, but you can see that I didn't even make hair. I just drew the hair right on the skull, and it's fine. These illustrations need to turn over pretty quickly.
How much time do you usually get then for, like, say, something like this? What are they giving you?
No, I would do a couple of these a day.
A couple of illustrations. So, like, this is one, and then you have a whole nother one that you're doing.
Yeah. If I'm busy, I can usually do 1 or 2 a day. Yeah.
Someone said you look very smart in that scan.
It's funny. I'm ending up with the same amount of hair, actually. I had a lot more hair right in the. It was like 20 years ago. I had a lot more hair. So this is a ZBrush render that ended up. So there's a condition. I think I can't remember what it is, but your teeth become translucent. It's very odd. Wow. There was a lot of back and forth trying to get this tuned exactly right. And most of it was figuring out, because there's so many different photos, so many different manifestations of the disease. The client didn't, really the right way to do it is say, send me the one that you prefer, and I'll do that one, because I had different reference photos that I was working from. So
you rendered that transparency also in ZBrush then too?
I think the transparency is not done in ZBrush. I think this is just painted in Photoshop. Mm-hmm. But I may have done something like, I might have gotten some of the sculptural detail out as a cavity map or something. I don't really remember. I do that sometimes. So the sclera is the white part of your eye, obviously, and sometimes this is a good example where normally, if I had to draw this, I would never send them such a nicely rendered face. I wouldn't send them both eyes, but because I can do it in ZBrush, and I tend to over deliver if I can, and it's not going to hurt me. This is the one where the disease. This is the same one with the teeth, actually, where the disease causes a malformation in the face. And so this kid this is based on a photo. This was lined up to a photo, more or less, and you can see I just grabbed hair off a reference photo somewhere and stuck it on there. It's not even that nice. But when lots of times, that image would be really small in a much larger image.
Right. Here's a great question.
What's that?
What qualifications do you need to do this kind of work?
So medical illustrators, most of the people in our association, and it's the Association of Medical Illustrators, have a master's degree in medical illustration. And there are several different types of master's degrees. There are a few programs. There's one at the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, Georgia. It's now Augusta University, actually. There's one at Johns Hopkins University. There's one at the University of Chicago. There's one at the Rochester Institute of Technology that just got accredited to teach at the graduate level.
Nice.
And there's a school in Toronto, the University of Toronto, that's excellent. And so all the schools are very good. And they really require 3 things. They require art, science, and technology. So you've got to be an artist. You've got to be interested in science at least. And you've got to have some, I would add technology in there, because the future is not sitting around drawing stuff in Photoshop on a couple of layers and selling those illustrations. The future is, building an asset library, managing it. So
So you guys would not contract out somebody to do work like this unless they had those credentials, or do you think it's possible?
Oh no, we contract out with lots of people.
Yes, you don't have to have the master's degree in essence.
No,
to do
there are some. I don't know if I should be naming names. There are some fabulous people in the field of medical illustration that didn't go to school, and there are some people that had science degrees that just started working as illustrators and they didn't receive any training. You can imagine that it spans the gamut. Medical illustration school is just a way of getting you'll take gross anatomy with the medical student. I took gross anatomy with the medical students.
You did? That's awesome.
Oh yeah, we even took a surgical techniques class.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we get to go into the OR, sit through surgeries. Back in the day, they used to let us scrub in and be part of when things were much looser. Yeah, I've scrubbed into surgeries before.
Yeah, the closest I've been, next to cadavers for doing some helping people in your world. So I haven't been able to do those. That would be awesome. Those are great. That'd be awesome classes to take.
They're wonderful, and we're very the programs are very good, and you learn so much. But you absolutely don't have to go to one of the programs to work as a medical illustrator. I mean, how would So this was kind of interesting. These I made with. This is an axon, and axons connect with other cells with other axons by dendrites, and dendrites have all kinds of different shapes and lengths. And so I made those as vector displacement brushes and just drew them out on the axon. Yeah, it was part of it was an experiment when vector displacement brushes still first came out. I knew I had to, I knew that was a powerful thing and I had to use it. And so I learned how to do it for this project. I haven't really gone back to it.
We could probably show them the brushes and they can get an understanding. We can even use the ones that ship with ZBrush.
Yeah.
Have yours loaded so they can get an understanding what those brushes do.
Let's do that. I don't know how much of this you want me to go through, if this is interesting, if you want me to show projects or not. Let me see here.
Yeah, a couple of images, and then you can probably jump into ZBrush and show, because some people might not be aware of what a vector displacement brush can do for them.
Okay.
So be good to show them so they have an understanding.
Yeah. So this is in the podocytes, in your kidneys. This is how your kidneys filter your blood. Little processes like this, and they're small enough that the red blood cells and big proteins can't get through, but the fluid can get through. And so that's what this is supposed to show. And if I had to do this again, I did some more research as I was going along. They're much taller than they are wide. They really are. They're almost like fins.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm looking forward to the next project. Lots of times from project to project, I will. Let me show you a couple other things here. These are the projects I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show as we get into them. Yeah,
and then one of the artists, it's a creature guy, said if you got any good weird anatomy stuff to show for creature guys.
This is pretty weird. This is pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, I can even see you using that stuff for patterns and stuff on creatures too, some of this stuff.
Yeah, here I was able to go get hepatocellular carcinoma from a section of the liver in pathology and take that image, bring it into Spotlight, and just paint it right onto the.
Say that 3 times fast.
I know. Yeah. So this is all some of the stuff, like making
these
cells.
These are ZBrush renders again, right? That you're just.
Yep. These are all straight out of ZBrush. Yep.
Yeah. And then that in the middle, that's the eye, right? Then that's in the little promotion video we did.
Yeah, I've got that. I can show that. Yeah. And so that's it. I built a lot of stuff like this. I mean, that would take forever to draw, and I build all that in ZBrush now. Here I used the insert mesh brush on a cylinder. I made a cylinder with the right number of subdivisions for those little radiation centers, and then used an insert mesh brush to draw those little buttons on. And then I selected one of the poly groups in the center of each button and scaled them down to the center, and they just drug right out and made those green lines for me. That way I could get the trajectory of them all the way. Because that's the thing here, is they put them in the scan in this thing, and there's a tiny little tube that points radiation down at the tumor, and they all point towards one point.
We've got a lot of questions coming through. Hold on.
What you got?
You're getting a lot of activity in the chat right now. Hold on. Let's see. So Hannah was asking, do you organize your asset library with your ZTLs or Z projects?
I really only save ZTLs for me are temporary files for me. You know, I save everything as a Z project now, and I save them with a render that looks like it does when I close it. When I'm, you know, when I'm organized, that's what I do. So when I search and I give it a logical name. So when I search for morpheoform basal cell carcinoma, I find this image and I can get my hands on it.
Nice. And then someone's coming back to about the alpha question. You don't create your own alphas, but you had mentioned high frequency detail sculpting in ZBrush somehow, since it doesn't read from a scan itself. So are you just finding alphas that you are using, or are you finding brushes that already have the alphas?
I just use the stuff that ships with ZBrush. The brushes,
I'll show you. You're just using the alphas that ship with ZBrush on a brush. So you're just.
I would probably be a better person if I went out and did a little investigation and found better alphas.
Yeah, we should show that too, probably, because in someone's also asking about the vector brushes to see them in action. So those are two things we definitely want you to show in ZBrush so they can get an understanding what's going on. Yeah, for sure.
So these little dimples here were just done with the Damien standard brush, and I just put it on spray and turn it way down.
Okay. Yeah, we'll show. Yeah, let's definitely show that so they can see it then too.
All right.
And then someone was asking, that's coming in while you're doing that, how do someone get into the medical illustration world coming from games or general 3D work?
So
do you guys take submissions or anything?
So the reason I really was so excited about doing this talk was I want those people to come into medical illustration. I think there's a subset of people who are at gaming and film and everything who think that medicine and surgery and anatomy and biology is really cool and they want to do it. I hope that they apply to one of the grad schools and get interested in making an attempt to become a medical illustrator and getting trained, because I want those people in our association. Our association is super tight. And we're all friends and we train each other. And I want those talented people to come from games and come from come from the film industry and come in and make our association better. That's really what
I'm going to share the website so people can also maybe not familiar with AMI, the organization itself. So I'll put that in the chat right now so people can at least get that website. And another question came for you were the ISO forums.
Yeah.
How big is your real-time team, and are you using Unity or Unreal for that?
We're Unity, Play Canvas, and I'm kind of out of my depth talking about that stuff. And web and some of the stuff we do is WebGL. I'm so busy. I'm so busy doing this. WebGL makes sense. But what I can tell you is that we don't say no to anybody. Every job that comes in, programs like, oh, we can absolutely do that, and they get it done. So very
I would say for the person that asked you about how getting in that world, one of the biggest things they just had their conference this past weekend. Unfortunately, you just missed their annual conference. But that's one thing I would highly recommend. I've been there multiple times myself. You can really get involved with everybody in this community and see what they're doing. And that's a great way to network and find people as well too. So I would recommend that if you can get to one of their conferences.
We would love to have you. And if someone has a technique or they want to present in some way, there's a call for papers. You can get in touch with me, and there's a call for papers every fall. We'd love to have you submit a presentation for our association. And I'll make some tutorials for the Horos to cloud stuff and try to get them up on my YouTube channel and get you a link to that. So.
Yeah, and then you can give us that link and we can add it. Again, what we're doing is live with Andrew right now. It is recorded and it will be always on our YouTube channel and on our Twitch channel. It's always going to be there. So we can put stuff and link once Andrew has some things like that. We can relink it for you all. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I don't actually use vector displacement maps that much. So
you have to start with a plane. We can just use the brushes that ship with so they can get an understanding.
So they get an understanding. Let's do that.
Yeah. So just grab a sphere, I guess, and just subdivide it up, and then we'll grab a couple of brushes and we can walk them through exactly what they're doing.
All right.
Yeah. So the benefit of vector displacement map brushes is they allow undercutting. Okay. So that means it's like an ear, right? You've got undercutting behind the ear. So if you're just only using a alpha, you're not going to have an actual gap between the ear and the head, right? So VDMs can do that. They're the chisel, Andrew.
Chisel. Thank you. I'm embarrassed that I don't know how to do this on
in
my
the
own.
top. You were
I
just
have-
there. Up.
I really-
No, they're right in the beginning on the left-hand side. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can.
So these are some of them. And so there's an example. He's got an ear, and you literally just draw out, and you can see that gap right there between the ear and the sphere. You would not get that with a normal alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a couple, and there's one of them now I think has 100 pieces in it. So if you hit the B key, I think right next, that's just a crazy mouth thing that I made.
The B key. I saw the
Yeah, hit B and then C. There's one with 85. Chisel organic. There you go. There's 85 in here now. And so they're on a plane because that's how you have to create them. And then you just, whatever you can sculpt on a plane, and then ZBrush can convert that and literally turn it into a brush. And a lot of artists use these.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of the reason I don't do this. So what's the quick key for calling up my brushes palette? Is there one?
B. You mean if you're
But I mean to see the options up here for this. There's not like N for seeing your subtools.
No.
There may not be.
That's a viewer. That's an IMN viewer.
And if you hold down Option, they'll go in rather than come out.
Yeah, you can even make these actually even as you're drawing out. Let ZBrush randomly select them too, or just keep switching forward or backwards as well. Even all that's possible.
Yeah, they're super useful when you need them. I've used them for. Oh, the one that I still need to make, I thought about it the other day, are stitches. You know, where someone's got. I know they've got baseball stitches in here, but they're very specific surgical sutures, like for a mattress suture. I could make those and then draw them out, and they would just appear in place. In fact, you could do it with the cut edge of the skin. So the cut edge of the skin was underneath each suture.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what you were probably also, when you were asking about the brushes, hitting the M key.
M. I mean,
M
that's it.
for multiple.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I figured there was a way to do it. I didn't know there was a way to do it. I figured there was a way to do it. So that's enough of that.
There you go. Those are the VDMs. And then they were asking about how you do your design. You said you just use the alphas that ship with ZBrush.
Yep. Yep. So this is needles are very specific. Needle tips are very specific. Obviously, they're very sharp, but they, let me turn this. Yeah, so this needs to be black. I don't know why I got set to white. And then outline, and then depth. And this is done with live Boolean. So if I turn the live Boolean off, turn off solo, you can see the shapes that go into making this, the two different cuts in here. They're very specific in the way that they're, this one is flat and this one is beveled to make it even sharper and cut better to get in there. But I thought this was a great use of live Boolean, because this is really all you need. I don't need real topology for this. I'm very happy to have this as a live structure that I can change the angles on. And also the geometry in this is tricky. It would be hard to build this and have these come to points. I'm sure ZBrush could do it. But like if you wanted quads across here, that'd be hard to do. It'd be hard for me to do. But
yeah, having that, I'm with you. The live Boolean was a game changer for me. The live interaction and using any mesh that you can put in there will all work. I mean,
it was so, and I talked to Paul right before some of that stuff came out, and you told me, I can't tell you what it is, but you're going to be blown away. And it was like right after, it was before I feel like it was before Z Remesher and before UV Master and stuff. And
I think no,
you were right.
UV Master's UV Master's now 13 years old.
Maybe it was after you did that.
Yeah. And then live Boolean was about, I want to say 6 years ago.
Okay, maybe it was before the live Boolean.
I don't remember. It's all a blur now with the way we're living too. The last years are like literally Avengers blimp. I feel like we're living.
Yeah, I'm doing this thing where I jump from project to project to project, and I've been doing this thing with the anatomy models, and I got ready to give a presentation. I hadn't looked at any of these models in a while, and I opened them up, and I'm like, these are not bad, you know?
That's always a good thing. You look back at your past work and go, all right.
That's all right. That's not bad.
Good job.
Did okay.
Yeah.
This was a fun project. Amyloidosis is where the left part of your heart the wall gets thickened. There's a protein that just builds up, doesn't get broken down properly. And so it basically makes just the left side of the heart thicker. So the muscle wall here, and it really is round. It's never really depicted that way in the photos or in the illustrations of it. And we were doing this for a great client, and we thought, wow, we're going to do this and we're going to, get it right. And I shipped this to the client, and they hated it. And they wanted the typical view of the heart, But it was a good use of the live Boolean, because I can put this plane and I could sculpt all that detail is just on a box that I subdivided, right? And then I have the inside of the heart.
Yep.
And let me show you both sides of that.
It looks like you remeshed it.
Yeah. And I took quite a bit of time building this and getting the vessels right and all that. I actually did that for a different project. And you can see how small the left ventricle is here. That's because it's gotten contracted by the amyloidosis. I just built all that. And so I took that model, I stuck it inside this model and subtracted it using live Boolean, right? And so it subtracted it out. And then the only other thing that I did was I added these. Let me show you this. Hang on one second. I added these muscle fibers in there because it doesn't look right without them. So let me show you this without that. It just looks too hollow. It doesn't look right, And so I added these things in, and because they're cut out with an identical box, I can go in here and move these. BMT for move topological, so it's just going to grab one of them. I can move them.
Because they're separate pieces.
They're separate pieces, yeah. I can move them around here and reposition them, get them exactly where I want. I got a lot of control over that. And then I thought it added a lot of realism to the piece. It made it look much more like the study does, and the actual pieces do in the pathology lab. So and then I sent it to the client, and they hated it. We had to start over. So that's
go figure.
That's the
someone's also asking if you have can at point share any poly painting tips specifically for realism as well.
Yeah, I've got one of those I can share. See these little vessels. In fact, I've got the alpha somewhere. Oh, where's that thing? It's called patch. Hang on, I got to go find it.
Sure.
But basically, if you have there it is. So it's actually in my startup textures. Look at that. I'm a genius. How do I get to those?
Why he's looking for that, someone asked again how to get in the medical illustration world. We had shared a link higher up in the chat of the organization that's best to go and get information where you can meet people in the community. And I know a person in here actually said they got a job by posting their work on ZBrush Central, and they're in the medical illustration world too. And I'd strongly recommend there. Thank you, Daisuke. He's reposting. I would get on that website and again look at their conferences that they're having. Look at where they're at in your area. They're always they're meeting up and stuff like that. And that way, it's a great way to meet people in the community and possibly get some freelance work too. That's a good way to get in.
So let me move the focal shift over a little bit. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So vessels are, when they run through tissue, they have a piece of they're basically underneath a very thin layer of tissue, right? And so what I found is that when I paint them on here, if I put a blue texture on either side of it, it looks a little bit more like a real vessel.
All right, so you've got a texture then with red.
And so when I do this,
you got a little bit of blue on the
it's got a little bit of blue. Yeah. And I don't know about most people, but I don't usually sculpt. I guess I could here, but I don't usually sculpt I don't usually sculpt and paint at the same time. I guess with this I probably would, because they really are. It's called vasorum, or the veins on, or the vessels on vessels, or these little finding little vessels here.
We probably should have had a game for every time you say something medical that just goes over my head and everything. Point, I don't know, or something.
Well, I like that because it's a vasorum. I mean, it's veins on veins. It kind of makes sense, right? Yeah, so that's one of the things that I use, but most of it is and I thought the same. I thought it was interesting when I went to the ZBrush Summit, how many really good artists say, "Oh, I just use the default tools. I use smooth," and I can't remember who it was. I can't remember. There's such incredible artists that go to that thing. But yeah, this is one of the things that I do. And then when you draw vessels look a little bit more real if they have places where they run straight for a while, because they really do that.
Yeah, that's good information even for people doing characters and creatures, right? Because they put veins and stuff.
They don't really always do this. Right?
Yeah,
they tend to go like this, and they'll run straight for a while, and then they'll get thin, and then they'll get big, and then they'll branch, and then blah blah blah.
That's a great tip. Yeah. So,
being able to crease polygroups so that you keep things that are sharp is a huge help. And I'll tell you another one that's really helpful. When I made a vascular tree, and I needed to give it some thickness, and then fill the hole at the end.
Yeah,
it was a revelation to me when I found out that with ZBrush, let me just show you this real quick. And everybody probably knows this except me, but
not necessarily.
So I'm gonna delete that. So with the ZBrush, if this was your vessel, you could extrude this. You could do edge loop. Perpendicular. I think that's all you need to do. And then you drag it out. What did I do wrong? There it goes. There we go. And then I didn't do that right. I need to come in, and I needed to. Why is it not giving me a new polygroup? Don't tell me. I can figure it. No, it's I do it wrong.
No, it's not. It's not going to make a new.
It doesn't give me a new polygroup by default.
No.
Huh. How about
You're just
that?
extruding from an existing edge.
Well, see, then what I would want to do is, okay, well, but now if I click on this one and then do, well, not that, but now I would want to come it back to the center, and then I would do close hole. And the reason I would do that is I would do it to the entire model, all the branch stuff at the same time. And that saved me hours one day, hours of work, and they were all the same. And so now what you need to do is because if I just go to subdivide this, it's going to soften everything, right? Well, I don't really want that. I want it to, let me close the holes here. Close holes. I need to get a keyboard shortcut for that. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I would want these to be their own polygroups, so that I can control them a little better. And I would make these two the same polygroup, and then I would do Alt G. So now I've creased all those edges. Now I could do that manually with the but now when I subdivide it, it will do this number. It'll be nice and crisp. So that's that. Any other questions?
I think we've caught up.
Okay.
It's been a very active chat. Oh, wait, here you go. Did all these pro tips come from working in the industry and matching realism, or was it a lot of it just this artistic anatomical knowledge from university, or is it a mix?
So I was not taught any ZBrush in school. Now they teach. I graduated 20 something years ago, so they didn't teach any of this in school, and now they do. But I would not count on the grad schools to give you a super high level understanding of ZBrush. The way you do it is you just have to do it a bunch. Honestly, the best training is Paul's, Joseph Drust's videos, and Pavlovich's videos. By far, those are the best things out there. By
Thank you.
far. Except
Yeah.
Pauls are the funniest. Pauls are really entertaining.
Yeah, well, I probably get a little wild at
They really are fun. They really are.
We've got more coming too. With that said, because we've got Ian Robinson now as part of the team, so making more videos. We've got a lot more videos coming down the pipe.
Yeah. Well, it's gotten to the point, when I first started learning ZBrush, it was almost to the point where we were still reading the manual for everything. My first ZBrush thing was the anglerfish. Who did the anglerfish? Was that you? That was before
anglerfish.
Remember that?
I'm trying. No, I don't. I'm trying to remember that.
That was really early on, and it was anyhow. We don't have to nerd out on that. So in this case, I actually had a scan of my foot. So this is my foot.
So this is your foot.
This is my foot.
What scanner are you using? Anthill? Or are you using photogrammetry?
Oh no, this is a CT scan.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a very high resolution CT scan.
Okay.
And then I painted it, and I don't know why the color seems a little off here. I don't know. I don't know what happened. And then I got the bones actually from that same model. I don't have them in here, but all I needed here was this much. I probably just built that actually. I probably didn't use the actual bones. But this shows a thing where they make a couple of specific cuts in the bone and put them back together, and then they put a screw in them. And yeah, so that's that.
Are you using Z-spheres to create any of your smaller vascular or another tool?
No, I don't use Z-spheres. When I need to draw vessels, if I wanted to draw a vessel on this, the thing that I did make was this. I made these things. So I would, if I wanted to, oops, that's got too many. Let's do this. Let's duplicate that. And it doesn't need to be super high resolution, but I want it high enough resolution that I can, so it'll adhere to really the form of the thing I'm drawing. Now, you can't have subdivisions when you're drawing out with, when you're drawing a curve like this, but that's how I do it. And now for people who aren't familiar, normally when you do that, it will come out like this. It will be, let's turn curve mode off. When you draw it, it'll just come out like that. And this is an insert mesh brush, right? So then you turn on stroke or curve mode, but usually when you turn it on, it will look like this. It will not have weld points. So when you go to draw it on here, let me make that bigger for you. It'll do that number, right? And so what you need to do is you need it to weld the points, and this is under modifiers.
Yep.
The depth is probably about right, but you could change that here, and it would make it, put it deeper into there. So now if you click back on that path, it'll weld all those things together. That's usually how I do it. And then I'll grab this path or the vessels themselves and move them into position. If I have to do a major change, right, so you can grab this and move it up and move it back. You can move it around. You can smooth it by clicking on it and then holding down shift. That was a revelation to me. I couldn't figure out why. If I hold down shift first and click on it, I'm smoothing the polygons around it rather than the path. And the path is really often at that stage what you want to smooth. Yeah.
Yeah, you can rotate the path too. If you click on the path and hold control, you can actually rotate as well.
Rotate. Look at this. Oh my goodness. Look at that. That's incredible. All right. So then the other thing that happens to me is, whoops, let's do this. All right. And let's do delete hidden. And so let's say that I had, I basically just have, let's just have these and let's clear everything else. So let's say I wanted to change where this vessel ended up. I would use, let's say I needed to move it over here. I don't really want to, stretch that out and remove it after I've already got it. So what I would do is I would go to Z Modeler brush. I would go over an edge. I would do bridge, 2 holes, and polygroup flat. And then I would go, polygroup flat just means it gives it all one polygroup. And now if I drag up and down, it's going to add subdivisions. And if I drag left and right, it's going to try to solve for the shape in between the two, the start and the end. And so that's how I would often, if I know I need to draw a vessel, that's the fastest way for me to do it. I'll figure out where it needs to start and where it needs to end and do it that way.
Yeah, I do that a lot too, I've done that stuff for tubes too, like maybe armor or something on a character. I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll just grab a cylinder and put another one in a totally different direction.
And
let the algorithm kind of figure it out a little bit.
Yeah. And it often,
I use that too.
I'm surprised what a good job it does. And with vessels, you're usually having to then step down to smaller vessels that are coming off of it. I would do those as, holes like that. And then I don't really want to extrude that. I would draw a vessel up to it and then bridge it back to this. That's usually what I would do.
Can you go back and hang on that? So he's using ZModeler. Can you go back before you bridge so they can see it? They didn't have time to see the menu.
Oh, the bridge
before you put the green part in.
Yeah.
Before you put the green. Okay.
So I just
deleted
it. I'm sorry.
Again.
So bridge,
and
you have to be over an edge. These are the options for edge. And basically the three menus here, or the menus that appear below this top menu, are contextual. They're different. So slide only has fewer options. Bridge has a bunch of options. What else has a bunch of options? Polygroup has some. And so here we're selecting not edges, but two holes. And the rest of these are really the default. The only thing I change it from polygroup rows to polygroup flat. Because if you do rows, it'll make each edge loop a different polygroup.
Yep.
And then you click on one, you click on the other, and while I'm still holding down with my cursor, with my stylus, and I drag up and down and it adds, and I drag right and it does that. And I don't have to do it in that order.
Okay. I think they're referring to the brush that he showed before. This was a brush he made. That's just an insert mesh brush of a cylinder with no cap on top and the bottom.
Yeah, that's it. That's all it is. It's just, and this.
If you want to select that one again, Andrew. We can show it to them a little bit. You want to select that one you were using, and then go to the brush palette, and then click on to mesh in the brush palette. There's a button right at the bottom of the brushes. Right, it says right there. You were just at to mesh. There you go. So here's the mesh. Here's what he's using. That's it. It's really simple.
Yeah.
And now technically you guys with the new extruder brushes, you could just use a flat plane and then we will extrude it along a curve for you and close both sides for you. So that there's a new brush that a couple versions ago we released. And that one's now one of my fun ones that I like to use a lot.
Very cool.
Yeah. There you go. Did it answer the question for the person I was asking? CRH Sculpt? I'm assuming this is the one you were referring to when you were asking. We'll wait until you catch up. Go on and we'll see. We'll make sure that question got answered.
Yeah. Trying to find here. I've got something here which shows. Oh my Cintiq just turns itself off every hour and a half. So let's see. This was fun. This was a demo that I did last year for the Association of Medical Illustrators. And I was basically showing how you can draw the choroidal vasculature onto the eye right on there. And that's the brush that I just showed you. The only difference is I said it's a taper. And it does all the solving for jumping over and snapping to the existing geometry, right? So as soon as I draw one of those vessels, it's now part of the geometry. So when I draw the next stroke, it's calculated. And so it'll lay right on top of that next vessel. And this is actually what the choroid does. It's super, super dense all the way around your eye. And I thought it'd be fun to try to recreate some of that in ZBrush. And this works great. This has dynamic subdiv on. And so this is all single. There's no resolution levels. And then once I finish drawing all the strokes, I basically just kind of tuck all the ends back into the largest vessel that's near them arbitrarily. Right, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm just basically making those. And there I'm stepped off the dynamic subdiv so you can see that. And then I grab I don't have a lot of video of it, but then I just grab it and move it over. And the beautiful thing about sculpting on a sphere is that every time that sphere rolls around, it looks brand new. And so you only need to do a little bit of it to make it look like you did the whole thing. But this was kind of a revelation, figuring out how to do this and get it to work, and leveraging ZBrush to, for what it does really well.
Really cool. It's mesmerizing just watching the video back too.
Yeah.
You get in like a little trance.
So let's see here.
Okay, so a question came through about fiber mesh. Is there a resource for using like fiber mesh for viruses, bacteria, and so on?
The time I use fiber mesh was, let me see here. I got it in here. It was this one. And the way I used it was this is a proteoglycan. So this is basically how cartilage and different tissues hold on to water. These little fibers attract water and kind of suck them up and hold on to it. And I just made one of these, and I used live Boolean to cut through it. And one of and this is, you can tell it's a fiber because it's a different color at the base than it is at the tip. This was a very simple problem, but I did use it another time on an ant, and I made a mask along the ant's leg, softened the mask, and told the fibers to vary their length and width based on the density of the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even their population. It may have even populated more of them where there was a mask, and that worked incredibly well.
The mask is actually a driver. If the mask, wherever the mask is stronger for you all, you're going to get bigger fibers lengthwise and widthwise, and where the mask is less, as in blurred, you're going to get smaller fibers height-wise and widthwise. We're actually using that information to help guide the fibers with the click of the button. And your topology too. So where there's more dense topology, you're going to have more fibers compared to where there's bigger topology. I know I did a series. I'd have to find it. I did a series and I called it the 6 rules of fiber mesh that are pretty much the foundational rules of fiber mesh. And once you have those 6 rules, you can do it a lot with it.
I love that. So if we were to do something like this and make a mask here, and then soften that mask by clicking, and then, hey, can I soften a mask in 2 directions at the same time? Or do I have to invert it and then soften it back that way?
Yeah, no, you invert it and soften back that. Yeah, that's it. Well, there are new growing. We added new masking options a couple versions ago, so maybe those might work for you.
I will check that out.
But it is, when you soften, we're going in all the vertex that are masked, then we're going out and blurring from that point out.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 3 different ways to do the mask. There's blur, there's grow, and then there's now also, I'm going blank on the verbiage, boosting and dilute masking now too.
Yeah.
So there's actually 3 different ways you guys could manipulate the mask with inside of ZBrush.
So I have not gotten into that yet. I need to do that. So let's pick one of these. Let me see here. So which one is short?
Oh man, now I gotta remember.
Let's see. Let's try that one. And what we're going to do is we're going to do that, and we're going to say preview blah 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 modifiers. Right, and so now it's only going to insert where there is a mask, and if you change the mask, it'll do it again. If the day you need it, it will save your life. It's magical. Yep.
Yeah, my fun one for that is I love using morph target with fiber meshes too.
How would you do that?
Oh, you want to show them? This will be fun.
Yeah.
Load anything you want. Let's load something else, maybe. Just visually. I like to do it on the demo head because I make him look like Abraham Lincoln. Or I try to make him look like Abraham Lincoln.
This is going to be the next thing we do, so we'll go ahead and open that up.
All right.
If it opens. I hope it opens. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just like he's highlighting, you can actually use a mask to control. You can also use sculpting to control where the fiber meshes go. So if you want to pick something that you can sculpt on, Andrew, I can walk you through.
Okay, I'm ready.
That too.
Can you subdivide it?
Yeah, divide it up a little. You don't need to go a ton. Yeah, that's enough. Now, make a morph target in your tool palette. So go to the tool and morph.
Okay.
Okay, and then now sculpt. Pick like a brush to sculpt with. Yeah, go in different areas. Yeah. There you go. Beautiful. Okay. And then now, if once you're done,
okay,
switch your morph target so it goes back to the original. Now just turn on fiber mesh. Just turn it on. Preview. Just hit preview. And then now in the bottom, there's a morph target guide. You just passed it. There you go. Boom.
Look at that.
So only where you sculpt the fibers go. And again, the length and the widths and everything is controlled by how much you've been playing with that part of the surface. So where there's less sculpting, they're going to be smaller. There's going to be less of them. And where you sculpted more, they'll be bigger and longer.
That is so cool.
Yeah. I love this. Is one of my fun ones that I like to use a lot.
That is so cool. Huh.
Since somebody was asking about fiber mesh, so
very cool.
Go ahead. I'll let you go back. Sorry.
All right. No, that's no problem at all.
You're getting me excited to want to show stuff.
So let me show. I've got a little movie saved for this one that's probably faster than me trying to show it.
And I want to let you know about your time just in case all the stuff that you want to show. You're about an hour, almost an hour and a half in now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We're having fun.
We're having a great time.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you, Paul.
Yeah. It's great to see you. It's too bad I wasn't able to be at the show with you this past weekend. It's been a long time. You've
been very good to the medical illustrators of the world. We try not to bother you unless we have a real problem.
I would encourage to always bother me.
So one of the things I wanted to show you was making these muscles, and because this is going to be a low resolution model in the end, and rather than having the muscles, normally what people do is they make the pelvis and then they make the muscles separate so they can be turned off or turned on or whatever. Well, at a low resolution model, they never look good. But this model actually at low resolution, it looks pretty good because they're contiguous. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it before I actually tried it. And it worked a lot better than I thought it was going to work. Let me get here and see.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, so this is the movie that I wanted to show you. And basically what I did was, you can't have any subdivisions on the model, of course, free subdivisions. I wouldn't attempt this with free subdivisions. Paul could probably figure it out. But basically all I do is I cut a hole. Let me slow that down. So what I did is,
yeah, that's a great technique. Origin insertion points. And then
I just find the origin and I delete it.
Yeah.
And then I did the same. You can't see it. It's on the back of the femur is where the piriformis muscle inserts. And then I just bridge until it's solved in between. And the rest of this is me just sculpting it, trying to get it into position. But it worked like a champ. It worked.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
The trick is that you're usually doing this after you've sculpted the pelvis, and you really want all that detail in the rest of the pelvis, back in the pelvis. And you have to do it with projection. And projection is one of those things that is potentially very destructive. You can really screw up your work if you don't. And what I tell people is, right before you project something, you save it, and then you do the projection, and then you carefully inspect every piece of the model, everything you need, every creased edge, every little, like inside the pelvis in the sacral canal in there, the spinal canal in there is there are a lot of really fine areas and they're close together. All that might have a bird's nest in it. And so you need to just be very careful as you're doing it. So, yeah, but this worked really well.
This might be fun to try with free subdivision level. That'll probably work well.
What is free subdivision level?
See, so if you
You're
have
blowing my mind.
You can freeze it, and then it would only give you level 1, and you can add geometry like this, and then you unfreeze, and ZBrush will give you back all your sculpted detail and all the subdivision levels automatically without any projection. We do it for you and still have the new geometry that you made.
So and it's probably that I'm not doing it right, but the times
No,
that I've
you are.
tried,
No, you are. It's just you're making me think now and going, I wonder how well that would work.
well, the times I've tried to use free subdivision level, when I came out, the amount of disaster that happened where this muscle intersected or got too close to the bone was a problem. And so what I would do is I would make a mask.
Yeah,
I can show you this. I would basically I would go down to the lowest subdivision. So this is that model all painted up. Nice. But I would basically go down to move the light up to where it's supposed to be. I would basically go back down to this lowest subdivision, not the lowest subdivision, and I would mask. I would basically make a mask of the muscle and then go back up in subdivision. That's the fastest way I can figure out how to. And then I would do the project. And so it was the only place that I really would have cleanup is right around here.
Yeah.
That would keep it from causing trouble. That's how I do it. I don't know if that's the right way to do it or not.
Dice Case jumping into with the new project from undo history. So you don't actually do duplications. That's actually how I like to do it as well now, too.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not using a matte cap. He's just using skin shade 4.
Yeah.
He's not using a matte cap.
And for any of those that came in late, that black line is handled by the mixer inside the materials palette, and you just.
Oh, that looks cool. Whoa. Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's a great technique, Andrew. That was awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, good.
That's a great idea.
Good. It worked here, and you get a little savings of the geometry because there's geometry for real-time rendering that I cut out. You think about the iliacus muscle, this big muscle right here. I cut out all those polygons on the muscle on the thing behind it, and they're not being calculated. I don't have to worry about them. They're not on my UV map. None of that stuff. And there's a bunch of stuff in here that's not being calculated now because it's all bridged together. Some of it's a mess, but not too bad. And also, when you're in the cadaver lab and you're looking at the cadavers, you don't cut them open and see a pelvis. You cut them open and start dissecting, and you see this. You see a big mass of bones knitted together with fascia and ligaments everywhere. So, anyhow.
This is awesome. This is great stuff.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. So this is the bronchial tree. I tried to find the data set that I built this from, and I just couldn't find it. And in this case, this is supposed to be seen from the inside, right? Okay. Like this. So you're supposed to be in there looking like that. So as you go down, you're only supposed to go to the left. So there's only detail on the left. So I only build what you can see from around the corner. So this one, all you have to worry about is not seeing, because you're just going to come down here. And I think you go up in here, and then we had a whole room built in there. And I don't have that model either today, but it was odd because I had to invert the polygons and sculpt it. I had to flip the polygons for sculpting it so I could sculpt on the detail as it would be seen. Otherwise, I'm sculpting everything as a negative from the outside. That's probably hard to understand, but it did help to sculpt this. So basically, when I'm sculpting on this is looking in. I'm going to turn on double-sided polygons here. So now we're looking at the outside of the model. Now they're turned on. You're actually sculpting inside the model. And because I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but that's how you would see it. And it's a little bit easier to sculpt it as you would see it. Yeah. So
yeah. And then someone real quick came in about the pelvic bones. Those were still all scans. You're not doing that stuff from scratch. You're just taking scans usually, right?
It's been so long since I made that pelvic model. I really don't remember. But I do have another pelvis. In fact, let's do that one. This one. This is someone who had, this is scan data of a pelvis. Let me get the actual data because I think that's after I've cleaned it up some. This is the actual data that came out. And it's a mess. And see these lines that are on this piece over here where it's so terribly broken? See these lines across here? Those do not exist over here. You know why?
Why?
It's because this is free. This is so broken that it's free. When a person breathes, it's moving up and down in the scanner.
Yeah. Yep.
which is just horrible to think about. But it helps you understand. I mean, some of those things are interesting. So here we can use half the pelvis, right? So we would take this half and make our model from that. And
that's a painful injury.
That's an awful pelvic break.
Fracture.
Can you imagine?
So I don't want to. I hurt my tailbone several times being an ice hockey player, and that alone took me like sitting and laying to bed. I couldn't even imagine having a bone break like that, pelvic bone like that break.
So this will show you the detail that you can get just by hitting the button. It didn't do anything else. All I did was ZBrush it, and it gives me this model, which is really a very, very good model. All the proportions there. You get a lot of detail. Like you can see where the iliac crest comes up here. It really is a great model. And from this, I'd probably continue to make, there's a lot of cleanup in here you'd have to do for real-time rendering, but yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that answers the question, right? I've lost the person that was asking it.
Okay.
This is all, guys. Thank you all for being so involved in the chat too. This is making the stream even more fun for Andrew and I think. I know for me.
So I made a heart valve for, this was a fun project to work on. And I knew that the radial symmetry was the answer here. And these little fibers down here, they actually hand sew these things. So this fibrous part at the bottom might be synthetic. It might be some kind of processed cartilage or from a pig heart or something. And they have to sew this to the valve. And so there's a lot of hand sewing in here. I assume it's hand sewn. But these wraps really look like this. They're little fibrous wraps that spiral around here. And because I have symmetry turned on under transform, y-axis, radially symmetric, and I have it set to 12, I can move these and they will, let me get on the right layer here. Now, I can move these and they will all move. And so I can fine tune how these things are placed. And I can be zoomed in on one knowing it's going to do it to all of them. And this was, again, I would not, to do this in cinema would be a much harder problem to do it. And also when I'm drawing these things, I can continue the stroke. So I can draw it on one side. I can show you that if people don't understand what that means. So.
You had mentioned you have your own personal YouTube, right?
Yeah, I don't have the link here, and I also need to clean it up a little bit. But I got a bunch of tutorials for stuff like this that I can share.
Somebody was asking for it.
Yeah, happy to do that. So let's take our arterial brush. Oops. Take our arterial brush and draw on this thing. I just want to show this real quick. So if we draw this out, it's still a path. You can see that little build line in the center. As long as I get that red line, I can continue drawing around. And I don't know how you would do this without that functionality. I don't know how you would. Oops. I don't know how you would do that otherwise. You'd have to draw a spline in Cinema and then contract it radially into the thing or something. It would be a nightmare. But this kind of fabric, this kind of just gentle folds and things in here, that's what ZBrush really excels at, because I can sculpt all that in and do it in radial symmetry, do it to one, and the thing, it just makes it move along really quickly. And then if I need to move the valve, I can just change the radial symmetry back down to 3 and get a real big brush and, move the valves in and out.
Yeah, and you did a video of this to show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you started that stream with this, showing literally sitting with the doctors and doing it right inside of ZBrush, showing them what it's going to look like.
Yep. So that's that. Any other questions?
No, I think those are all. I think I'm caught up.
All right. Let's see here. Transfer refill device. Let's do this one. This one's kind of neat. Yeah, let me open that video. So we did a really interesting project to create anatomic models of of cancers, of facial head and neck cancers, and the folks are supposed to go down through the different layers of the tissue. We made a whole interactive and my job in this is to make the models, and I'm also in charge of the anatomy and the science, and then those go for elaboration. But this is actually rendered right in ZBrush. This is actually the viewport render in ZBrush, and I can go get the actual tumors from surgical papers where they describe the tumors and they have photos of them. I take them into Photoshop, I combine those and make one master perfect tumor. I bring it in with Spotlight and just draw it on the model. And that gives me a lot of control over how intense the lesion is. And then using the extractor brush, once I get a lesion I like, if I need to put it somewhere else, it's a very simple process of getting it and moving it around. Let me see here.
By the way, the angular fish that you brought up, we posted in chat. It was done by Pixelator himself.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That changed my life. Well, that had to be
2.0.
Yeah. I remember there was this thing where to make the fins, he drew a line and drew cross marks on it, inverted it and drew it out, and it was a fin because it was thin at the edge and had rays going back toward. It just blew my mind.
Yeah, I'm going to post it again just in case anybody's missed it.
You got to keep in mind that his tools and the computers that were running them were really not great.
They were a different time.
It was a totally different time.
Yeah.
So this is to take that lesion or that face and make this model is not a hard thing to do. It's actually work happens pretty quickly. And then this is the morpheoform scar, right? And you can see that it's sculpted in, contracted in like that.
Another question came through. When making a heart model from either a CT or MRI scan, how much of the model do you find having to clean up yourself, especially when trying to still portray the pathology?
So the scan data that we get, we don't actually use any of that topology. We build our own topology on top of it. I mean, in rare, like the pelvis, you end up having to do so much retopology work, especially if you're making it for real-time rendering, that you almost have to start over. It's excellent data. And what I'll end up doing is making the pelvis that has the topology I want, subdividing it, and then projecting the detail that I want back in to my model, usually at one of the lower resolutions, because you don't want the noise, right? You just want the shape. You really want the shape of the model in there. So, this was an interesting one that we did recently, and this is for very fast illustration stuff. We had a figure that had a pattern of bumps on it, basically. And what I did was I needed to go from no disease all the way to severe disease. And I had to make these other states in between. And the way that I ended up doing it was I just make sure that, because what does the client want? The client's going to come through and say they don't want this lesion on there. And so what I did was I went through and you have to have both models visible with ZProject. BZP is ZProject. And then you just paint, and it will look through your subtool palette to an active subtool, and it will basically project that model wherever you paint. And so if I go like this, it will disappear. And so then I could go through and do the severe state and just project back through to get the moderate, the mild, and the almost clear. And I have a tremendous amount of control over if the client tells me they want one lesion or another. The other way you could do it, if you can't see it, and it works really well, is to do this. The mask, whichever lesions you don't want, invert the mask, turn on the normal, and then say project. And here we want geometry and color. And it will go through and project the normal into those spots. So that was a time saver for sure. Let me show you one other one where there was a huge time savings, and again, it gave me an objective measure to go back to my client and say, it actually wasn't an issue because it just worked so well. Let me show you this. And you're going to think this is a terribly simple illustration, but if you had to draw it, it would eat you alive. And it's this one. So the hand bones fuse and grow in a very specific pattern. So what I did was I took the normal hand bone, this is essentially an adult hand bone, and it basically has two kinds of shapes in it. And I set the layer palette to record, and I made the newborn hand. And then I divided up the number of steps, and I went back in the layer palette and just exported those images. If I had to draw these, look at the difference between 5 years and 6 years. It's imperceptible. You can't see it. But if you look from 3 months to 7 years, you can see a difference. And that way ZBrush is solving for those images all the way through. And it's handling the rendering, it's handling everything. And when the client comes through and says, I can't see a difference between 5 years and 6 years, I can say, well, this is the method that I applied, to this illustration to make this happen. They can argue with, we can then change it if they don't like it. Maybe there's some magical thing about 6 years they want to see different, but this was the plan. So I have,
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it really worked.
Do you have any public domain sites that you use regularly for downloading accurate anatomical models?
The models that we use, that we download, that are publicly available, are almost exclusively molecular models. So if I need a molecular model of testosterone or oxytocin or some bizarre protein, there's a bunch of ways you can get those. I don't specialize in that myself. I can do the basics. But that's one of the things you learn in grad school. Grad school will teach you that. And they also teach you enough of the chemistry and the functional biology of how those things are built, that you know what colors they're supposed to be and how they bend and what are realistic movements of them. That's a big part of the field right now. Is most people don't do what I do in the field. Let's be clear. Most people do, not most, but maybe the majority, I don't know, do molecular modeling. They make cells and cellular environments and things. I'm just showing you this because ZBrush really lends itself. But some of those models do make their way through ZBrush as well.
Yeah.
So how are we doing on time?
You're already gone for about an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay.
Is there anything you've been doing good? You were worried about you might not have enough. I'm like, you have plenty.
Let me see here. What else do we have?
Can injury impact the way how the bones are shaped over time?
That's a really interesting question, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but I can almost find this right now. Let me see if I get. Let me see. I can do this. Okay. I can show you this. There's a really interesting study that I found when I was doing my last project. And it was, let me do this. So this is from my AMI lecture, Association of Medical Illustrators lecture. This is about project management and stuff. This is it right here. So the pelvis on the top, these are both male pelvises. These are pelvises, the number A up here, letter A on the top, were found in a graveyard, and they were medieval. They were very old. And that's a male pelvis, right? It's upright. Yeah. It's got the really sharp angle down there at the bottom. Females would be soft. The one at the bottom is from the population in the same area, modern day.
Wow.
Is that not shocking?
This is crazy. Wow.
Anyhow, this is the paper if you want to go check it out. And since we're here, I can show you some of these other things, which since so many people are interested in.
Let's say about our diets.
It's got to be just lifestyle. And what's funny is that I've always had trouble looking at a scan and at just the skeleton and saying, oh, that's a male or that's a female, even though I know theoretically what they're supposed to be like. This is probably part of the reason why I have so much trouble, is that they've changed so much.
Wow. Yeah.
And anyhow, that was just floored me. So these are the sinuses that I got out of Osiris, and I actually got a couple that were better than this. These are quite old, but I didn't have images of them. but there's a lot of detail in there about how those sinuses are put together and how they meet up with one another. And it makes no sense to see them in dissection because you basically destroy them to see them. And so we could build them this way. So we actually use data like this, and then we build topology around these individual shapes in ZBrush and then connect them up. There's no easy way to do it. It takes forever, but this provides a really good guide for how to do it. Yeah. Let me see if there's anything else in here that.
Have you done any models made for pre-surgical planning? And if so, how do those models differ from real-time models or medical images models?
I have done some of those. It's been a long time. I didn't do a lot of them, and I'm not sure how useful they were. There are people that specialize in that. I mean, I can make good Osiris or Horus models in 3D and move them around, but you know, they're very interesting to look at, and you get a tremendous amount from them. But were they helpful to the surgeons in planning their surgeries? I'm not sure they were. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. But it was more of a thing where they said, "Do you want to do this?" And I said, "Yes, I do want to do it." So we worked on it.
I'm not sure that Patrick, if you're referring to the valve, I'm not sure what valve you're referring to. You're trying to find out what brush he used. If you're referring to the one I think a little bit ago, I think he was just using the move buff, the radial symmetry. Is that the piece you were talking about? To Patrick, who's asking the question, I'm not sure if that's the piece you're referring to. Yeah. And then CRH Sculpt has a question for you, Andrew. Would you use your bridging holes method to create ligaments, or another method to make the sheeting like features like extrude mask? So for ligaments, do you use the bridging technique you showed?
Yeah, I would make the ligament. Yeah, I would just do it the same way. Yeah. And go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
I think this is the valve, I think, Patrick, you're looking for, right? That you're asking? Is this the piece? He was using move topological.
Yeah.
With radial. I'm guessing this is the one I think he's referring to.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. And I'm sorry I don't have this as an active path. I can show you, but what I showed a minute ago where I was drawing around the shape, I would turn off, let's see here. And I would draw this around and then rotate around the model and continue the path. And so this is drawn as one continuous path all the way around. And when I got to here, I can't remember if I did a mirror thing or not.
You probably just bridged it.
I probably just bridged it. Well, what I'm getting at is I came up here. Did I then flip this and put it over here, or did I then draw down the other side? I don't remember. But regardless, it was a huge time saver to be able to do that. And I had a lot of control. And, you know, when I'm finished with it, they really do look like fabric. I mean, they look like little, you know, they look like they're supposed to look. So let me see here. I've got an astrocyte I can show you how to build. That's kind of fun. Let's do that. So I made a brush for, I think it's in here.
I think Patrick was referring to the arterial brush. I think he must have said.
Oh, yeah. Let's delete that. Hang on a second. Yeah, so this is if I wanted to make an astrocyte is a cell that just has a lot of projections off of it. It's in your brain. And I've just got an insert mesh brush. And when I first did this, I made a bunch of these and they were all different. And I realized you can't really tell, you know, you can't. And, okay, so let's say that's, and I think I have too many. Yeah, I got too many subdivisions. This doesn't need nearly so many subdivisions.
Yeah, it's 8.3 million.
Yeah, I'm gonna Dynamesh this in a minute and get back to the real world. Let's do that now before I get in trouble. And I don't know if there's a magical calculation or not. I just do Dynamesh and then I undo it if it's the wrong resolution.
Well, there is now. There is now.
See, set you up for the perfect.
Yeah. If you undo that, let's show that since you brought that up. So if you want to undo your Dynamesh, so you can now click and drag from the resolution slider or the button that says picker and drag it over. No, right below resolution. Yeah. And just click and drag into the document. And then you'll see the resolution slider will change based upon the density of the mesh that you're hovering over. Right. So if you like the density of, say, what particular part of the mesh, you just click and drag over. So try it again and just click and drag and start moving it over the mesh. And then you'll see the resolution slider actually change. There you go. See, now just moving in different spots. You see the resolution.
That is so cool.
So if there's a part that you see, hey, this density is really good, especially for the thinner parts you have, you probably want that density since it's holding it a little, maybe a little, also possibly better. Or this, as you can see, the sphere is way more dense.
Way more.
I just want that density across the whole thing. You can now just click and drag and hover over that spherical part, and we will adjust the slider.
I got you.
To that number, and now you Dynamesh, everything will get that resolution.
All right. Well, I think I can do that and say I want half of that, so that's useful. So I want 17, whatever.
So you want like you want 800 or something.
That's probably still way too much.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, that's like 592.
Yeah.
That's not that bad.
It's not bad. It will smooth better though. I'll be able to get. Let's do a little lower. Let's see if that's. Why is that not doing it? Anyhow.
Yep.
There it goes. I don't want that. Something like that. And then what I would do is I would make a selection of this. And then I would soften it by clicking on it. There's not a faster way to do that?
Soften the mask?
Yeah. No. There's not, is there? Okay.
No.
All right. And then I would... Well, I tell you what, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and ZRemesh it and be done with it. Because and then we can, the ZRemeshed model will work much better. I could have done keep groups if I wanted to keep the groups. And I'm always amazed at how ZRemesher is able to, so that's just such a, I mean, nobody had models like that 15 years ago, Not that fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the days.
Back in the day. Yeah.
Back in the day. For internal organs, is there a resource you use for a scanned model, like a liver, for example, to get a base?
You don't get great. So the internal organs, getting them out of a program like Osiris or Horos or something, they don't really come out right. And you end up having to make them from scratch. And that's, again, one of those things that you learn in grad school. You go dissect cadavers with the medical students. In fact, a lot of medical students don't dissect cadavers anymore, but our students do.
Really?
Believe it or not, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we use anatomy a lot more than, I mean, an ophthalmologist knows a tremendous amount about this anatomy, but, if you ask them where organs and things are in the viscera, they're not, last time they talked about that was in medical school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you can see that these things didn't draw right on the model properly. And the reason is, so I actually do have a couple of different dendrites in here. So if you look at this, I've got, so that's the axon that's supposed to come out of it. I forgot to do that one. And if you look at it, it comes out and it's away from the model. And the reason it's away from the model is that I need to change the depth on the brush. So rather than do that, I'm going to drop this depth down like that. And now when I draw it out, it will embed into that model, right?
Yep.
So that's our neuron. We'd have to Dynamesh it again to make it part of it. But so there's that.
Or even use live Booleans now.
Live Booleans. My God.
Instead of Dynameshing.
Yeah.
That would work too.
Should I be doing that?
Well, you can, because then you can throw Sculptris Pro in the game too.
I have been using Sculptris Pro. That's an amazing thing. It really is. I had a little video here. Let me show you that. It's actually in my little talk. It's right here, and it's That's probably not going to play properly, but it does allow me. Oh, gosh, it's got sound with it.
We don't hear it.
Oh, well.
I don't hear it.
You don't hear it? Okay.
No. It's probably playing through your headphones.
Oh, it probably is. Yeah. But I can go through and down. It's terrible resolution. I apologize. That's terrible. We're not doing that. That's too bad. Let's talk about this. This one's a better one. Let's do that one. And then I don't know if we're winding up. I don't want to overstay my welcome.
No, you're not gonna say yeah, but you got some time. I do have something at 2 o'clock my time. Okay. 4 o'clock your time.
So let me show you this, because this was a really good use for me of the dynamic and the thickness option in dynamic subdivision. So this is myelin, and myelin wraps around your axons and insulates them just like if you would insulate an electrical cord. And it's a lot of little thin layers that are a single cell wall thick, really. There's a cell wall and a cell wall, and they're basically just plastered up against each other, and that's each layer, and they wind like this around the axon. And so what I did was I made that in Cinema, where they just wrap procedurally around the entire tube, and then I masked them using the mask lasso tool like this, and I made some unusual shape on the mask. Oh, I had a mask on it already, like this. And then I looked at it from this side and I trimmed that mask. Basically, I did this, and then I did this. And then I deleted everything in the middle. And that's how I ended up with these very unusual shapes in there. It actually worked really quickly. It didn't take that long. And then where is dynamic subdivision?
You were just at it. Yep. There you go.
Yeah. And it has, right now it's a thickness of 0.002. I could make that 0.001. Right. And then I push them apart. That's the other part of this, is that I push them apart by grabbing the Move Topological brush and just grabbing them and moving them. And this is what happens in multiple sclerosis, or there's a bunch of diseases where your immune cells attack your nerves, the myelin in your nerves, and just start eating it up, and they can't insulate and your nerves don't work properly. Yeah, that's what we did there. But I thought that was a good use of dynamic subdivision to show the multiple layers. You can kind of see how that onion, the loops down there are still together. I was trying to get that notion to kind of drift apart. It'd be pretty easy to make morph targets of this and animate it too. And the advantage is that, so the reason I just showed you moving that, if we didn't have dynamic subdivision and that was actual geometry, every time I moved something, I would be smearing that thin geometry, right? I'd be pushing polygons through other polygons or shearing it in some way. Mm-hmm. But because that's all done procedurally with the dynamic subdivision, none of that happens. And you get a nice crisp edge at the edge. It's a better mousetrap. It's a better way to do that.
Yeah. Anyhow. That's a little segue too here. Have you prepared models for 3D printing, specifically difficult organs like the heart with chambers?
We haven't had a lot of instances of doing that. My partner, Russ Adams, does a lot of that. He does a lot of 3D printing. But it's usually for, what have we done? We've done some device stuff. We have done some cells here and there, but no real organs. The people who do a lot of that are at teaching centers or academic medical centers. And so medical illustrators have a bunch of different jobs. Some of them just work in the legal field. Some of them obviously work in doing high-end 3D animations. Some of us work in doing surgical models, like making, like the first thing that I showed, we were making models and using them to make surgical illustrations. And then there are other people that work in surgical planning that do that exclusively. But it's really the people that are assigned to academic medical centers that would produce like conjoined twins. They'll make 3D prints of the anatomy in there so that they can inspect them and have every chance to review it before they go and do the surgery. That's a part of what the planning, but it's an important part. So, Any other questions?
No, I think we all got caught up.
Yeah. So I think I'm nearing the end here. Let me see if I've got anything else I can show. My skin disease progression. I think we're narrowing in on it,
Yeah.
Paul. I think we're getting.
You shared a lot.
Did I?
Shared a lot.
Okay, good.
Yeah. This has been a lot of fun.
Good.
At least for me, it's been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun for me too.
Yeah. It's been great. All right. I think that's everything, right? You think you got through everything you wanted to get through?
I think that's it. I'm going through my little list here.
Sure. Double check.
Yeah. Amyloidosis, muscle and pelvis.
And again, while he's looking, everybody, this is being recorded. So you'll be able to rewatch this as much as you want on our YouTube channel and on our Twitch channel as well. Obviously, it takes time for the video to complete and get put on the website. But it will be there forever for you all to go back and rewatch.
Yeah. So I want to show one thing, and this is as much a question for you, Paul, as it is for the audience. See these really crisp colors up here? This was the ask. The ask was that we have crisp distinctions between aorta and the common iliac, so between the tan part and the red part, and all these, everything has its own crisp distinction. And the way that I did it, and I want you to tell me a better way to do this, was because this is what it looks like on a low resolution model.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I made the UV maps and then filled them. But the trick was I had to fill them with very specific colors. I used Z color to get the actual colors, and I dropped those on just the model before I UV'd it. And then when I went into UV Master, I basically sampled those colors, command clicked on the polygroups, and filled back again with each color.
Yep.
I cloned the texture and reapplied it. Is there a faster way for me to do that?
This is a way to do it, but you can also, with Morph UV, you can actually paint and sculpt on the UVs themselves now with Morph UV. So technically, you would do, if I was doing this, I'd probably, same thing, I would have a color swatch somewhere in the document that I can just grab from really quick with the either C key or click and drag, right? I probably would use the C key. And then I'd go into Morph UV mode and then probably just paint directly. I grab the color and just paint right on that section. And then grab the next color and paint right in that section. And if you wanted to add a little fun to it, I would probably turn on the topological button that you're using for Move Topological, because that can be used with any brush. And so I would probably just make a brush that's only painting on topology islands. And I wouldn't even have
so it would, I got you. So it would restrict it to that. I got you.
Yeah, you're restricting to that island of topology. Or you just use a lasso, mask out real quick, and then paint. So in essence, it's pretty much relatively the same thing you're doing, but instead of using UV Master, you could just use Morph UV.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because low polygon's not going to be able to hold the colors and give you distinct lines. So the texture is then going to give you that distinct coloring lines if you want to. Otherwise, you'd have to divide the model up and then just paint right on the model.
Yeah, I didn't want to. That would be the only reason I was doing that, because in this case, all the colors were going to be done procedurally when they bake out the light maps, and so I didn't really want to do that.
Yes, definitely for your one where you're talking about just use polygrouping and paint. The problem is you don't actually get to control the polygrouping color. Where in this case, Andrew wanted distinct colors for each part of it, right? He wanted a specific red and a specific purple. You're not going to be able to do that with polygrouping. You're not going to get that distinct color.
I remember the problem. The problem is really that when I get in this view, I don't know what's what. And this is actually this is simpler than some of the other problems we had. And so the only thing I could do is that this would have whatever the color, let's say the gray was the color next to it. That gray color would be smeared in here on either end. And so I would sample from the center of the color, magic wand, or command click on it, and then fill it back with the color that was right in it. So that's probably not of interest to people, but I'll look into Morph UV and see if I can.
But the topological could solve that, because once you start painting on the island, you're not going to be able to paint on the other island.
Right? I get that. That's not the problem. Selecting it wasn't the problem. It was knowing what
Knowing
structure.
what part of this is the UV part
Yeah.
itself. Right.
Yeah. But you know what? That topological thing would save a couple of steps because I could just hit C to sample the color, start painting, and then move my cursor over the next one, hit C, and start painting again. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a lot better. Okay.
Yeah, that or pick the colors that you want to pick for each part. Just put a little bit on each part, so then you can visually see what color in that part is, and you would know what the UV portion is. The only other thing then maybe for that scenario, maybe, well, you're not going to know. I'm going to have to think. I might be able to even come up with something better.
Well, let me know, because that was because that requires a lot of steps, because there's a lot of cloning of this back and forth and copying UVs and pasting UVs. Oh, I got another question for you. Can I save more than one polygroup set?
No.
Why not? I need that.
No, only through what Stefan was bringing up through painting. So you can convert your polygroups to paint and then put it on a texture, and then bring that texture back.
Here's the thing. Anatomically, on that vessel vasculature, I want one set of polygroups.
Yeah.
And in that case, they need to line up with the UVs. But there are other models, like when I make a skull model, it's got so many little twists and turns and weird little things in it. The polygroups that I need for UV Master to do it on its own are very different than the ones that I want to live with the model for painting and things, you know? So I guess the question is, why can't I have that? Why can't I have that?
Yeah, because the polygroups are being assigned to the geometry itself. So then that data is being saved with that geometry. So right now, we're not allowing multiple information of data points, multiple polygroups on one data. So for example, you take one vertex point, it can't have multiple RGB, multiple polygrouping IDs on one vertex point right now. But I've shelved it in the request list, my friend, and it's going to be in there, so we can bring it up.
Thank you very much. And the way that we do it now is we make a derivative model, and we say these, this is polygroup section, whatever. So sometimes we've had up to 3 different sets of polygroups for one model. But
give me a minute. Let me simmer on that one. I might come up with something else. I'm trying to think really quickly right now while we're live. If there was a way I could tell you right now.
If I had a split screen view, it would also help. In fact, one of the ways we did it was to take it into Maxon, because the big problem is not even knowing which color it was; it's knowing which structure is which. Because ideally, I would be able to say, "Oh, this is the uterine artery," and I'd look up on my Google sheet to see which color I've got assigned to that. Dial up the hex value and drop it in. But if it's once that UV map is flattened out, I can't always see what is what. So I end up having to do it kind of twice. I have to do it on the low resolution one, and then I have to go back and do it again on the UV one. It just takes a long time.
Yeah, normally you would have, we don't have a UV editor tool, right? So normally you would just have a UV editor tool hosting the UVs, and you'd still have the 3D model. But ZBrush doesn't have a UV editor tool.
Gotcha.
So that's what it would need to make it the easiest to do it that way. And then to their question, someone's coming through being able to move your islands. You can already. If you can use flatten. Like, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I can't do it on this one. I have to open something else.
You can do it on that vessel one that you just pulled up.
Yeah, that was actually a movie. That wasn't.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's doing actually, and a little bit what he was just saying about that coloring. He's in essence doing that trick.
Yeah. I think this one might have something.
To show you live.
So let's see here. I'm going to break something. This is going to try to UV something. It's going to break. Let's see here. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do it. There we go. There we go. So let's do. Go to UV Master. Work on polygroups, symmetry off, work on clone, unwrap. There it goes. Flatten. And then, you can, if you want to reposition these, you can, and then they'll work fine. Is that what you mean?
Yep, that's what I mean. Yeah, and
And
he's
what
using
Paul-
the control
yeah.
key to click and select what polygroup he wants to use, and all the rest get maxed out. And that's how you can move around your UV.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll go through and move these and repack them so they're
Yeah.
a little bit more efficient. I'm not sure that really matters, but and then the painting thing. Let's do that real quick, so I know how to do it. It would be
I
under
wouldn't
auto
do it on this one. I would do it on the Morph UV, the one I was saying, because then you don't need multiple models. You don't need to do any copying and pasting or anything like that.
All right, so how would I do that? So I'm
So
going to
go back to the
unflatten,
original.
copy
Yeah.
UVs, paste UVs.
And this
All right.
might help you because Morph UV will actually show sculpted detail.
All right.
So just go to Morph UV, go to UV map, and hit Morph UV. And now you can paint and sculpt on this. So you turn off polygrouping. You will actually see your sculpt too. Now you just paint like normal.
Huh. How
And
about
then
that?
when you morph back, that'll still be applied to the 3D version.
All right, so I'm going to hit color. I'm going to turn this to, just turn that off. I'm going to get a different color. And then, all right, so how would I get that to?
You've got gradient on right now, and you also still have live booleans on too. You don't need live boolean. There you go.
All right, so how would I, so right now that's going to paint all the way
Yes,
across.
and then if you want to turn on topological, I've actually never tried that. It should work.
Yeah, it's
So
gonna work.
in auto masking, at the bottom, turn on topological. Now try it. Oh, you have a curve on. You have a lazy mouse. Turn lazy mouse off.
Uh-oh.
Maybe.
No.
Oh yeah,
Change
because
the
you're gonna need the
range.
range to be a lot bigger. Yeah, it's not gonna work. Now the range needs to be way bigger. You got to make your brush size probably pretty big. Yeah, no, it's not gonna work.
All right. It's not an auto masking thing.
No.
All right. Well,
It's just because it's got a range that allows the brush to go out only so far. So, and because you're painting, it's only letting it go out so far.
you know, the Morph UV would also help me because I can kind of watch them go out a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, with flatten, they just flatten. You don't get a chance to see them.
Yeah, you can use masking here though too.
Okay.
So you can mask it. You can even mask it now and then morph.
Yeah.
And then morph.
Oh.
Like that way you're visually seeing everything, and then now pick your color and fill it.
Mm.
Now just pick your color and fill it.
Yeah, that might actually solve that one thing right there. Might actually do what I needed to do. Okay. Because that way I could do them one at a. Because one of the problems, you can't do them. You need to do them one at a time. You got to say, this is the uterine artery. Look up the color. This is the color. Drop the color, and then move on to the next thing. Okay.
Yeah. If you do have this though polygrouping, are they they're polygrouped off right now?
Yeah, everything that I have would be polygrouped. Yeah.
Okay, so then let's try this one then. Do you go to Morph UV again?
How did I lose
Morph
Morph
it.
UV?
Oh, you delete it. There you go. Okay, and then now in the auto masking, see the one that says mask by polygroups slider, turn off the topological. And at the top, the very top, turn that slider all the way to 100. Okay, now just pick one of the islands and paint a different color.
That's
There you
the
go.
ticket.
There you
Okay.
go. That's the way then it'd be a way to do it. Because then it's using the polygroup. So you can only paint on the first polygroup that you touch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so what I've been doing is I've got some people, I mean, there's very rare instances where you need it, but I needed specific colors. So I made 102 different colors.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did it by taking a flat plane and using auto groups to auto group it. And then I selected from there. I just selected visibly different colors for each one from that group. So I knew they were all different.
Yeah, and you can import and save these out as well.
Mhm.
Through Z color.
Yeah. This was a lot. Actually, this made the project much easier because I can also take this hex value and make it so that in my Google Sheet, I have the same color reference there. So I know that color number 32 is referencing this other thing.
Yeah.
Just in terms of bookkeeping, that really helped.
Yep.
Because some of these things get really confusing.
But there you go. And then now if you unmorph, you'll get your 3D model back and everything will be transferred.
Yeah. That's
And
slick.
then I'll save you steps and time.
Yeah.
For as much as I'd like to stay, unfortunately, I gotta go.
I got to go too. I got stuff to do. So this was fun. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your support of of medical illustrators over the years, Paul.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure and getting to know everybody in the world of as well. I've enjoyed my years speaking with you and many other people within the industry. So I really appreciate you taking so much time today to share.
Oh,
You shared a lot. You shared a lot. So
Oh, did I?
Yeah. And then for everybody else, obviously those watching that have enjoyed this with Andrew, we are doing special streams every Tuesday like this. So Andrew's was an industry spotlight, really showing what the medical illustrators can do. But I also want to highlight next week, we're doing a new one that we've never done before. Well, we've done it before, but it's going to be the first time doing it with a studio. I'm going to share my screen really quick. Bear the thing that's going to happen here because I only have one monitor right now. Let's see, is it sharing my screen? I can't tell because my other monitor actually went out on me. Is it? Oh, it is sharing my screen. Okay. So we are actually doing a multi-stream with Funko next week. We're going to have several artists from Funko all in one stream at a time. And they're going to be sitting there sculpting a likeness of themselves, but with the IP of like a Funko Pop or one of their other IPs. So it should be a lot of fun. It's going to be probably chock full of little tips and tricks that they like to use for doing all of their models at Funko. So this is going to be a really, really fun stream. And this is going to be the first one that we're doing actually with a studio that's going to be sharing the artists with us, and we're all going to be all the artists will be from Funko. So it should be a lot of fun. So I'll copy this. I know we've been putting it in there for everybody. So let me unshare my screen now. Here we go. My other monitor just went out on me, so I don't have a second monitor to see. Everyone saw that, yeah? Or no? Here, I'll put the link in there.
I can't tell. I think I'm still on the sharing like that you said.
Did everyone see my screen? I put the link in there so you're all aware of it as well. Unfortunately, my other monitor actually went out on me. So I'm down to one monitor right now. So again, though, Andrew, thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And did you post the link to the Association of Medical Illustrators?
Yes, I did that several times. Yep.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's just ami.org.
That's it.
Yep.
Yep.
So please, I know some of you were asking about trying to get people to connect. That's the best place to start to find these, communicate with artists like Andrew in that industry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. We're going to call it a stream. It's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you all too that joined us. You were awesome. You were all really engaged, asking a lot of questions for Andrew. We had a lot of fun. He did share a lot. Please continue to tune in to our ZBrush Live channel here. And every Tuesday, again, we are doing special streams like we did here with Andrew. So please take a look at that calendar link I just sent you and come back and join us for some more streams. I'm Paul Gabry with the ZBrush team, and we've had Andrew Swift here for another industry spotlight, and we'll see you all later. Bye-bye.